The ACC has no chance of competing with the Big Ten or SEC without Notre Dame. I think Clemson wants out of the ACC badly, so does Florida State. This is all predicated on Notre Dame, by the way. I think things are going to happen. There's way too much activity going on. I think the chips are going to fall all over the place here. That was Paul Finebaum earlier this week. He's out promoting a book on WFNZ in Charlotte. And there's a lot that Paul has to say, generally speaking, about the ACC and so forth. And I do think that what he's talking about with Clemson and Florida State, they are eager to leave. But there's a lot going on here. It's not as simple as people want to make it out to be. Again, we talked about this a lot. I'm going to continue to talk about this. I've got a story coming up over on Dog Post, probably going to be out Saturday or Sunday. I don't know if I can finish it before then, about the factual reality of what's going on here. Notre Dame's contract with NBC expires in 2025. Guess what else is happening in 2025? Notre Dame and Texas and Oklahoma are coming to the SEC. That's done. That's a done deal. So it makes sense that if Notre Dame wanted to kind of fly on in and coast on into the SEC at that point, they could. But there is no one team that it makes a lot of sense for them to enter the SEC. If there were four teams, I think the possibility is there that the SEC would do it. I think the Notre Dame move is this is my speculation. This is my call. I don't think anybody's coming into the SEC without Notre Dame coming with them. That's as it stands right now with people that I talk to behind the scenes. They don't buy it. And these are decision makers that I'm talking to. So my skepticism is not just based on their talk or their hearsay. It's also based on the numbers that I've been reporting on and that will be out over on Dog Post here in the near future. That Notre Dame has, as it's turning out, one of the worst media deals out there. So I don't know if moving would be away from NBC would be the end of the world for Notre Dame. Now, when I say it's one of the worst deals, I'm talking about strictly in football. They're also getting money they're also getting money from the ACC. So actually their rights deal is not the end of the world, but they're not appropriately valued as it stands today. Okay, and I'll get into that over on Dog Post. But to say for Paul's talking about here how the ACC could kind of just go away. It's not just going to go away. It's going to have to crumble completely. Like it's going to have to not exist. And the ramifications for Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, whoever you want to talk about, Miami leaving the league, it's going to cost them close to $500 million right now to leave, and in the near future. I mean, the money isn't getting any worse, so to speak, and the length of the deal is still another 14 years. You're going to have to pay three times what the ACC is paying you right now, and you have other considerations. Um, it's just not going to be right now. It's hard to imagine right now that there's going to be an ACC school that would have A, the money, B, the guts to do it. And even if you have both, you might not be permitted to do it because just because you can leave the league doesn't mean that you can broadcast your home games, which is the whole point of leaving. So, Paul's right when he says that these guys are so eager to leave. Texas and Oklahoma are eager to leave. USC and UCLA, I'm assuming, are eager to leave. None of them are talking about leaving early. Why? Because the grant of rights in the ACC is a disaster. The grant of rights in the Big 12 is basically the same thing. And that's why we're not seeing Texas and Oklahoma leave right now. Could they leave a year early? Possibly, but I kind of doubt that. If you pick up DAWGSTRUCTION today, which I'm getting narrowly, we are almost at the bottom of the books for this run. You need to pick them up today. Get it now. then you get, so that would be your 80-page commemorative national championship book. You're going to get a season preview for free. It comes in the packaging with it. Make sure you're getting both. If you just want the season preview, the link is down below for both these. You can get the link down below for the season preview. You can also pick it up at Red Zone on Clayton. That is 1 block north of the Arch. Take a left, and you'll be there in no time. So I would make sure you're checking both the Red Zone out. There's a lot of talk here, and Paul's job is not to be an understander of contracts for the ACC and its friends. But there's a lot of reporting out here that is not based in reality. Okay, there's a lot of stuff that's being left out. And the grant of rights at the ACC is a real thing. It is separate from their media deal. So the ACC is going to control the rights for Clemson, Florida State, etc. for a while. In terms of buying it out, look, you can do whatever you want. The question is, how much will it cost? And again, rough math, back of envelope, it's going to be north of $400 million. And that the question is, if even if you can get that kind of money scraped around. Georgia's budget is $180 million a year. That doesn't mean they're making $180 million. That's the revenue. They're not. That's not the profit. So the people are talking about, oh, this is not that much. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know what you're talking about. This is a substantial hurdle that is in the way of teams leaving. So is the ACC dying? Yeah, but it's dying an extremely slow death. There is no contract that keeps Georgia in the SEC. It doesn't exist. I mean, I have checked on this a couple of times. South Carolina, the same thing. So there's no SEC that, you know, the only team right now that really can move is Notre Dame, and that's just football. I don't know about the other stuff, but they may be willing to say we will flush out our football deal and not move forward with the ACC with the grant of rights. We will pay that, I don't know, 60, 70, 100,000, $100 million to leave and go to the SEC. We already have our football rights. We can do that. We'll leave and go to the Big Ten. There's a lot of stuff that Notre Dame can do. Notre Dame is not like anyone else in college football because of their situation contractually. The Big 12, those schools could all leave just when Texas and Oklahoma are leaving. But there's no real interest for any of those schools. The Pac 12, those schools could all leave, but there's no real interest in those schools. Okay, I'm assuming, I know that the SEC schools, they could leave too, but why would you? And secondly, my assumption is that if you're a Big Ten school, you could leave and go to any of these conferences. I don't know what the grant of rights is there. Now, Maryland has left the ACC, but they paid a steep price. And that was before this deal was in place through 2036. So, no, this is not simple, even for Notre Dame. Would the SEC want these schools? They would want Notre Dame. I don't know for sure if they would want Florida State, Miami, Clemson, North Carolina. I don't know that. Um, I have people telling me they would not want some of those schools. Um, just being straight up. So I don't think we're fast forwarding to anywhere here. We are kind of where we're at for now. And Texas and Oklahoma were either going to go to the Big Ten or the ACC. They were leaving. It didn't look like they were going to the Pac-12 anymore, but they were leaving, and there was some fear, if you want to call it that, in the SEC that Texas and OU would go to the ACC. Then that would be a very different conversation with Texas, Oklahoma, Miami, Florida State, and Clemson. Those are 5 legitimate top 25 programs, or should be. They've not all been that way. I think we've talked about that a lot. That would be a real threat to the SEC to me. Now you can't say that, and we're watching the ACC crumble, albeit slowly. If you're Clemson, uh, I mean, It's really unfair. They've got to leave the ACC. I just don't know how they're supposed to pull this off. I mean, they literally are handcuffed to that league, and they don't have the money. I mean, almost nobody would have this kind of money. And not only that, they also have you handcuffed that you might not be able to broadcast home games. Now, with that said, Clemson, just Clemson, just not picking on them. Let's just pick any ACC school. Florida State. They don't draw the eyeballs that Alabama, Georgia, etc. draw. They just don't. So, if Clemson were having the type of run of Florida State, like let's just say Auburn currently is, the value wouldn't be there. So the reason why Clemson is at its peak right now is because they've been at their peak. So their value is at their peak. Is that going to be that way in 10 years? I mean, if this were 10 years ago and it were 2012, no, we would not be having this conversation about Clemson. They would be, hey, they make a lot of sense. But y'all, that contract, the grant of rights, is a real problem. And what Paul is saying here, he's right. But he said this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, once in a generation opportunity. It's my opinion. The Big Ten and SEC wants Notre Dame badly. I agree with that. When Notre Dame makes a decision, everything else will happen. But there's going to be a price to pay. This will be bloody, and the ACC is not just going to fall apart. We've been hearing about the Big 12 falling apart for decades, plural now. We've seen 4 schools leave the Big 12: Nebraska, Colorado, well, more than 4. Nebraska, Colorado, Texas A&M, Texas, and Oklahoma. They're all gone. The big players are gone. And what still exists? The Big 12 still exists. The ACC is going to exist. It's just not going to exist with all the schools. And those schools leaving, it's going to hurt them to leave. You'll see. Mark my words.